And we're back again, you guys. This is just, I mean, I am absolutely blown away. And again, you guys, if you have questions, comments, make sure that you're putting those in. We will make sure that we are asking our experts your questions as we move along. Dr. Patrick Porter is with us, and I had the distinct pleasure of meeting him, oh gosh, back in the springtime. He came in and was part of a summit that I did, and he's been on the podcast. I've been on his, lots of collaboration happening. And I want to share a little bit of a story because he really, when I met him, he introduced this whole new technology that I had never heard of. You know, we've all heard of meditation, and brain tapping goes way beyond meditation. It is actually working within the frequency of the brain. And he'll tell the story much, much better. I'm not a sciencey, geeky kind of person, and I'm sure I'm butchering it and destroying it. But what I can tell you is I use his brain tapping. In fact, I like to have, Donna used to say, I go to bed with Patrick every night, you know, and it's so soothing. But the big thing, and it's relaxing, and it's just really changes the anxiety and stress that you're feeling within your body. But my biggest story came from last summer. I did a 30-day sugar detox. And within the app, there's a health one. And one of the apps in there is about sugar detox. And sugar addiction. And I did that every morning. That was my go-to app that I listened to. And I made it through this 30-day sugar detox. And I was eating less than 8 grams of sugar a day. So, I mean, I was going down to like minimally nothing. And that was coming from vegetables, you know. So I had zero sugar cravings, zero, none whatsoever, and no withdrawals. I didn't have any of the symptoms that happen to most people. It was absolutely incredible. And so now I'll let you take it away, Patrick. But I was just so grateful to have that tool in my arsenal.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I know my good friend, Dr. Daryl Joffrey, just came out with his book, Get Off Your Sugar. And he talks about BrainTap throughout that book. So we're getting a lot of promotion for getting rid of sugar. But the technology is really big on addiction, helping people with addiction. In fact, when I talk to people, that's how we really got into this. My dad was a very gifted alcoholic. You know, everything could be going just perfectly for him, and he'd find a reason to go get drunk. And then lucky for us, the church elders came over. I was just about 11 years old at the time, and basically convinced my dad to go to a relaxation seminar that changed our life, because he realized that he was drinking to turn off his overactive brain in his nervous system that was so stressed out. I mean, it was really, and it was done through technology-driven meditation. So we can talk a little bit about that. And then that's kind of what we do at BrainTap, and why people choose it, because they don't, when you talk about biohacking, you're looking at ways to accelerate a result you could get otherwise, you know, if you did everything perfectly. And meditation is difficult. In fact, most people don't know that they don't even scan their brain because they don't know what's going on. They either feel good or bad when they meditate. But one of the startling things we found with over 30,000 brain scans is we've only found one person outside of seasoned meditators, like we're talking about gurus, because I get to go to India all the time. Those guys were great, and gals. But most everybody else, when they meditate, actually is stressing their brain out. And which is kind of different, and especially if people have an overactive, what we call monkey mind, when that conscious mind is going. That's why mindfulness is so good once somebody masters it. So we're going to take that off the table, because, you know, everybody thinks, gosh, I got to go to the mountains, meditate for 30 years. And really it does take, you know, if you have a guru who's teaching you or someone like that, yeah, you can learn. You can, like TM, I talked to someone just 2 days ago that said they studied with the Maharishi for 6 months. It cost $10,000, and now they're doing BrainTap, and they're wondering if they're going to go back and do TM again. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, I'm getting deeper with BrainTap, and and I said, well, you can still do your other meditations if you want. But for people that have never meditated or don't want to spend the money to learn how, we tell people press play to change. You don't need to do anything else. And we can talk about the science, of course, what's in behind it and all of that, go into detail, or I'm not sure if you want to ask me another question or.
Absolutely, because I know for me, when I first learned, okay, first of all, you got to understand, I'm a person that I was told I had a stressful life. So I had to find ways to de-stress. So I'd want to take a hot bath. I couldn't even sit in the bathtub long enough for it to fill up with water. I'm like, I got to get out of here. I got to move. I got to go, go, go. And so meditation for me, and I do meditate now, and I do brain tapping. But in the beginning, I didn't understand, it was like, I felt like I had to shut my brain off, go back and focus on the breathing, all these techniques. And then I was so beating myself up. I can understand the stress and the anxiety with it, because I'm like, my brain's not ever shutting off. It just doesn't. And I can't be the only one.
So can I say something real quick? Because I think a lot of listeners might be lost right now in regards to, is this something we use? Is this a tool? Is it do a little bit more? I'm familiar with emotional tapping.
Let me kind of explain it. We have an app.
Yeah.
There's an app on the phone. So unlike emotional tapping, we're talking about tapping into the brain's potential. And I know EFT and all those other techniques, we would teach those to our therapists. Those are pre-brain tap. Like, you can set the nervous system up. You're doing different things, and we know those things work. I mean, if somebody's out there doing the tapping, even though I do this, I love and appreciate myself, and going around there, all those things are really great. But what we want to do is, how can we tap a person's potential? Which means, in the field of, I like to tell people, it's the field of infinite possibility that we live in. There's a quantum field, and we need to get in there, because right now everything's just probable. So if you're confused, that emotion is going to drive behavior. So what we want to do with BrainTap, with the app alone, you can just put that on with your earphones, your earbuds. You put it on, you select out of the 1,300 different sessions, which one you want to do, and there's series. So if you want to do, like you were doing, sugar addiction, we have an addiction series. We also have about 9 sessions, if you search sugar, that all talk about different sugar, getting off sugar. And it's all positive psychology. So there's actually, if you use the headset, which is behind me there, if you use the headset and wear it, there's actually 5 different technologies. So for those wondering what we're talking about here, number 1 technology is the sound. Now, the sound's important because our primitive brain, we've trained it since, prehistoric times. So here we are, we take in over 25,000 pieces of information, but our brain actually only operates on 40 of those pieces. So we're emitting a lot of information, but that doesn't mean our subconscious, which runs 95% of the show, isn't doing something with that information. And what I mean by that is, if we were to sit near the ocean and hear the ocean waves and just relax and him coming in, our body is actually going to begin to mimic the ocean. That's 10 hertz frequency. Our body works like a biofeedback mechanism, really. When 2 things are close together, it's not just tuning forks that resonate and vibrate together. When you're close to somebody, the closer, now in the quantum world, there's no separation. So now that we've seen each other here on video and we're talking, then we're connected. There's a quantum entanglement there. But the closer we are, close proximity, like close relationships, they've actually done studies where, this is weird study, but it actually happened. It happens with people too. But they took a lie detector, they hooked it up to a tree in the forest because it's measuring stress, and they can register stress on a plant. They took a branch back to the lab. It wasn't attached to the tree anymore, and they put it on fire. The tree in the forest registered pain when the branch in the lab was being affected. So what that tells us is our biological system is connected. We're all connected in some way. So from the ocean to the sea. So just to kind of put it in perspective for the listeners, and why we chose the different frequencies and what we use with BrainTap, because there's sound, there's light, there's frequency. Those are 3 main things that we're doing. But let's imagine we're flying through space in a spaceship, and we look at Earth, and even with technology we have today, we can figure out the frequency of every living thing.
Mhm.
And when the scientists put this device up into one of our satellites, pointed it back at Earth, it actually registered one being and made the sound of Om. It scared the heck out. It's in a book called The Crystal Planet by Dr. Jockman. And that kind of shocked the scientists. But the Earth itself has a resonating frequency between 0.1 and 100. What other organic, let's say, matter on Earth does that is our brain. Our brain has a resonating frequency between 0.1 and 100. So 0.1 is deep delta, some people call epsilon, which is the deepest brainwave state. And then you have the higher states, which is called gamma. A perfect brainwave incorporates all of those frequencies. Even though you're asleep, we're in what's a brainwave state called delta, which is a slower brainwave state. That's good when we're sleeping, but bad when we're awake. So these brain scans that we've done, especially at trade shows when we were doing those, we found that over 90% of the people scanned, with thousands of people, they were over 60% delta while they were awake. So we've all heard the expression, the masses are asleep. Well, they might not be asleep, but they want to be. You know, their brains definitely, and that's a sign of inflammation and stress. So, or maybe even traumatic brain injury. So the first thing that we do with BrainTap, and this is why meditating without help at first, unless you have a breathing technique, a coach, somebody teaching you, there's a lot of, I'm not saying that they have to do BrainTap to get these results, but we just do it quicker and faster than anything I know of. So, but there probably is going to be something, you know, down the road that we'll do something like this. But music can help. So if you're not doing it, you want to put some kind of music in. And that's why there's a science out there. And this is a brain hack from the 70s, actually. And the scientists in Russia found out something they called the Mozart effect. You can look this up. The Mozart effect says, hey, if you play this Baroque classical music, now there's a lot of music like that because a lot of people listen to like Enya type music, you know, just relaxing music that doesn't have drum beats. But what they found out in these studies was that while you're listening to this music, your brain actually works better. It synchronizes. And one of the main things we want to do with the brain hack to tap into your full brain's potential, your brain has to be synchronized. So music can do that. In fact, if someone's out there who's ever learned how to play the piano, you use something called the metronome. You can go on YouTube and search synchronizing metronomes, and you're going to be shocked what you find. There's one that comes up usually first. It's 200 metronomes. The guy starts them all at different times. Within 3 to 4 minutes, they're all perfectly synchronized. This also happens with grandfather clocks. If you get a chance to go into a grandfather clock store, when I was in New York City, I would always go in there because they're all synchronized. And they don't know why this happens, but we live in a synchronizing universe. But what happens to our brain as we get better looking, more intelligent with age, certain things happen to our brain. Number one, usually what happens is one hemisphere slows down before the other.
Really?
So one brain hack that we did that hopefully those out there listening will find value, we've now moved this up. We did a pilot study with women 55, 65, and we sent them to their doctor to get diagnosed. They were already diagnosed, but we had them go back and get a document saying, hey, I've got dementia. We had them do cognitive scoring tests with Cambridge Science Scoring. They scored out they had dementia. We did a brain scan on each of them. We found out that across the board, they all had a slower left hemisphere than right hemisphere. Now, the reason this is important is if I ask you to remember your favorite memory, a lot of people think, well, I'm just going to go back into the filing cabinet of my mind and I'm going to pull up this memory. It's going to give me all the data. No, what happens is the brain lights up sometimes up to 8 or more places in the brain, gathers all this information, assembles it, and then that's why they call it the representational system, so we represent it to ourselves. And if the brain is even off a nanosecond, I mean, we're talking about a fraction of a second, the information gets deleted. That's why we don't have, like, we've all been to a party before when we're stressed out. We just get there, we see 30 people, we might know 5 of them, and everybody starts introducing people to us. And then somebody that was introduced just 3 minutes ago comes over and you go, oh gosh, what was their name? I know their name. They just told me their name, but you were stressed out when you heard it. And then you don't remember it. So you do everything to avoid saying their name. You walk over to get a drink or some food, and all of a sudden the name pops in your head.
Mm-hmm.
This is because the brain works best in a relaxed state, actually an alpha state. That's a synchronizing state. And so, but what we have to do is we have to train the brain to do that. Now, we've done pretty much everything we can to get the brain out of synchronization. We've learned to write with one hand. We learned to kick with one foot. We do, we're not doing the things we used to do. Think about, if you do martial arts or dancing or yoga, those kind of things, you're going to keep your whole brain working. But most people don't do that. We're not outside hunting and gathering, using our bodies as much. That's why we always recommend that people do something like Tai Chi or yoga or breathing exercises. These are all things that synchronize the brain. But what we wanted to do is we said, okay, women, these were all women. We were doing a pilot study to prove out what we could do. 6 weeks later, what we had them do is BrainTap 3 times a day, because we also have 3 different times that we feel are the best time, not just to meditate, but to maximize your brain's potential. In the morning, you shouldn't need to relax as much because you just had hopefully a nice night's sleep.
Right.
And when you wake up in the morning, but you still need to get your brain in gear. Remember, most people are waking up, but their brain's not waking up. So they have to do something that most people love, which is to have a cup of coffee or a stimulant of some sort. Mm-hmm. We recommend you don't do you can still have coffee and all of that, but don't have it till 10 o'clock or later, because you want to get your brain regulating appropriately. Then if you need it, like for a morning little pickup or whatever, that's fine. But the reality is that if we can turn on the electrical system of the body, so think in terms of you had a switch. One way the switch is you're in your survivor brain. Mm-hmm. This is the fight or flight. Our bodies really haven't changed from the day of the saber-toothed tiger. And this is what most people do, unfortunately. They turn on their alarm. Right? They set their alarm at night. This is the number one worst thing you can do for your nervous system, unless you set your alarm to play beautiful music, or they have alarms now that wake up the room with light. Yeah. Those are really good. I have a pad that was sent to me for sleeping. That's basically it cools the temperature down on my side of the bed, so you get it really cool. But then in the morning, like an hour before I'm waking up, it slowly brings my temperature back up. Even though I don't need it, I've not used an alarm ever, but it's basically so I know, hey, if the bed's warm, it's time for me to get up. I don't even have to look at the clock. So I get woke up gently, like the earth would do when the earth is warming up. So what happens though, if you set your alarm at night and you've got an obnoxious ringer, that goes off, your brain, at the moment you set that alarm, you set up a stressful event. That's an anticipatory stress event, almost like PTSD. You had it yesterday, you had it the day before, you've conditioned yourself. And then what happens is you wake up in the morning, and you get up, and your nervous system's a wreck, but then hopefully you're healthy and it regulates, right? This is okay. But most people then, first thing they do is they pick up their cell phone and they look at mainstream media, and immediately they go into fight or flight again. The average person looks at their phone 150 times a day. So that's a lot. And every time you do, we've actually had people, we've monitored them live time while they're sitting there in a brain scan. We had their phone sitting there. They couldn't look at their phone. But every time it dinged, every time it did anything, their brain would just spike. They had this cortisol popping. So we said, okay, we're going to put the phone across the room. We're going to do a BrainTap session. We're going to record it live. Even though it was across the room, every time it vibrated or dinged, they still had a response, even though they weren't consciously aware of it. Wow. Because we pick up so much. Remember, we're picking up 25,000 pieces of information every second. We're just not acting on those. So now the key to brain tapping and really tapping into your brain's potential is to use your auditory processing power. It only takes about 75% of your brain, which is fine. That's why a lot of people, when they go to the symphony, they paid $200 for the ticket, but they're sleeping. And because the brain goes, wow, this must be sleep time because I've not done it. And they'll gladly pay the $200 next month to hear it again because they're not getting that deep of relaxation. But what we did is we found, hey, if we could mimic the natural light of a candle, which is a 10 hertz frequency. Remember the ocean's 10 hertz frequency. A candle flickering, if you've ever meditated to a candle or had one there, the reason people like those in the room or they're flickering, it's actually your body is tuning into that and you're getting more alpha, which creates more acetylcholine. So the brain hack is, hey, how can we create more of these feel-good neurochemicals since we have at our disposal the world's greatest pharmacy? I mean, we can tap into that with thoughts, with actions, with beliefs. So you can set your environment up like that. But when in 1985, when they started selling LEDs, light emitting diodes, they're not really lights, they're diodes that emit light, but we could actually tune those to different frequencies. Now we're talking about brainwave frequencies right now. So in the eyes, we're actually flashing that light. In closed eyes, actually, it's not seeing it through your retinal vision. It's actually feeding the nervous system. The nervous system saying, hey, what's that light about? What's that light about? We have a part of our brain called the reticular activating system. And this system is there to protect us. And it's always on guard. So if you've got that switch up and you're in fight or flight, you're on guard. The problem is people can't turn that off. So like you said, before you could get into the bathtub and take your bath, you're really geared up, but you can't wait. Your body's geared up. You have all this energy. So we need a way to ground that. In fact, if we could flip the switch and turn on your, what we call the thriving brain, you would have melted right into the tub, no problem. Time doesn't exist there. You're able to relax and let go. The problem is most people don't know how to disengage their nervous system. But when we put light and sound into the brain, especially a unique pattern. In order to get neuroplasticity, we need a unique pattern. So in this pattern, what's happening is the brain is following it and the sound is matching it. So there's light and sound. Now, this is something most people don't know, but when you're at a conference and you can't hear the speaker, but then you adjust your vision, so now you can see the speaker, now you can hear the speaker, that's because your eyes control 30% of your hearing.
Oh.
Yeah, so think of it like a disc, like a sonar disc, where you can pan it. We only hear what we're pointing at. That's how our eyes work. Now we'll hear loud noises behind us, and we'll do different things because those are all active. But where our real attention is, that's why a lot of people say, "Look at me when I'm talking to you," because if you're looking over here, your brain's processing all this other information. It's not processing what you're hearing. Right. So that's really important. So what we found out was, wow, if we stimulate the brain, we can get you not only in alpha, which is a really good state. That's where before 1980, that's where everybody went to meditate. They didn't know any different. That was, everybody goes to alpha. Well, we found out that with light and sound, we could take people to theta in as little as 3 sessions. Now, why is that important? Companies like Muse, which we love the Muse, it's a really nice little neurofeedback device, costs a couple $100, and it can measure brainwaves. But they actually remove theta from their menu. That's because 99% of all people out there can't get to theta. It's a very small bandwidth of brainwave frequencies, but that's your most powerful healing state. There's a lot of people that use it as a gimmick. They're saying, oh, theta healing, theta this. We've measured a lot of those people. They're not going to theta. They're talking about theta. The problem with most adults is they don't have enough theta. When you're in theta state, your brain actually your brain doesn't do it. Your brain instructs your gut to make GABA because all your neurotransmitters are made in your gut. Your biggest neural network is not between your ears. It's in your belly. Your gut has more neural connections than your brain. And the real controller of all of this is your heart. Okay, so you have 40,000 neutrino cells in your heart, and that creates what's called a coherence. So it's communicating twice as much information to your brain as your brain does to your heart. So the heart is really in control. So one of the things that we do, and one of the ways you can get these two to talk better is to breathe better. So a lot of the session is about breathing, and I'll bring people back to their breath and keep their connected breathing. When you sit across from somebody that didn't hear this lecture, let's say, and you're sitting there, you're going to notice that most people at about 2 or 3 minutes in the conversation will start holding their breath. because they're thinking about what they're going to say to you. They're processing your information. Their brain's full. They don't know what else to do. And that's why a lot of, when you're communicating with friends, you're breathing, you're laughing, you're doing things. But when you're trying to really hold on, people start holding their breath. The minute you start holding your breath, you turn on that sympathetic system or that survivor brain.
Wow.
But when you breathe out, you've turned on the parasympathetic system or that thriving brain. So that's why if you can practice breathing in, let's say to the mental count of 4, breathing out to the count of 8. And then when you're sitting places, just concentrate on breathing out, because your body naturally breathes in, but we have to force ourselves to breathe out. So it's one of those things that in the body will then you'll start regulating this nervous system, because it's about flowing back and forth. So back to our study in Florida, just so I can wrap that up. So now that we have a little bit of the background, when they went through this study, remember we have 3 different times that they can do brain tapping. We required them to listen 3 times a day for the study, 6 weeks long. They had to do our morning session. We call it digital coffee. The reason for that is we're going to wake up the brain. The best brain state is not any one of these different brainwave frequencies. It's a accumulation of them. About 40% of your brain should be in beta. This is making everyday decisions. But if you have too much beta, you're going to have anxiety, stress, frustration. All negative emotions only happen in this one brainwave. Okay. If they happen in other brainwaves, you have a psychological disorder that you need to do something besides BrainTap to do it. But if you start to relax, on the one hand, you get into alpha. That's the dreamy, drowsy, relaxed place, or that's where you go when you're with your friends and you're doing stuff and you go, wow, I can't believe the day just went by. Mm-hmm. Because in alpha, there's no time. And then there's theta. So alpha should be about 30 to 35% of the brain, 10% theta, and very small, anywhere between 5 to 8% delta and 5 to 8% gamma. If you have that, you have what's called a master brainwave. And that's not my research or knowledge. It's a woman that we hired when we were with Light and Sound Research. It's still available. It's called the Master Brainwave by Ann Wise. And she was our person. She was our researcher. And she went around the world and she measured brains. Now, we have a lot better equipment today than we ever had then. Right. Because we couldn't measure all the things we can. Like we use a device called the WAVI. We use one called NeuroInfinity. These can all measure different regions of the brain, different voltages and temperatures, or different attitudes in the brain, which means how much of each voltage or brainwave's going on. So what we did, when this master brainwave happened, when we measured these women, remember their brain was not balanced. Mm-hmm. So we had to create new sessions. So I created sessions for the research where we sped up the left hemisphere, we slowed down the right hemisphere. And we can do that because you're wearing glasses and each light does something different. With whatever's happening in the right eye is happening in the left ear and vice versa, so we can get the brain balance. After the 6 weeks, we had them listen to, during the 6 weeks, we had them listen to an afternoon session. Mm-hmm. One of the things, if you get tired in the afternoon, a lot of people run, this is tea time, right? Or whatever, coffee time. People, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, people get that dip. That's because our biological clock, actually at about 2 o'clock, wherever you're at on the planet, 2 o'clock, you have a drop in temperature. That also happens at 3:30 in the morning. Now, it depends on where you're at around the world, because we're tuned to the light of the sun. Our body is tuned to not only the frequencies of where we live, but to our sun. For instance, if we don't get to bed by 10 o'clock at night, between 10 and 2 o'clock, to be more specific, you're not going to make as much melatonin. So you can sacrifice that, or you can do something to get into the deeper state. You have to be in a deep delta state by 2 to get that melatonin production working for you. And that's anywhere in the world. It's not 2 o'clock in New York or 2 o'clock wherever. It's wherever you're at in the world. It's like we're tuned to that. Our biological clock is tuned to that. And this is what happens with jet lag. So we had them do the one in the middle of the day because of that drop in core temperature, but also because we naturally get tired. We've used up energy. We live in an energy economy. We also proved with 300 people, a study that we did with the NIH had us presented here in May of this year, where we showed that we could take adults 45 to 65, one session of BrainTap, we could reduce their stress by 38.5% in one 20-minute session. Then if they use the BrainTap just 3 times a week, which we did over the course of a month, At the end of the month, that new baseline became their new baseline. So now their brain is operating at that new frequency, let's say. And of course, they got to keep doing it. It's like brushing your teeth. You're not going to lose it. But with these people that had severe dementia, we said, we need you to do it every day, not just 3 times a week. So we had them do it every day. And we also showed that with that study that we could reclaim up to 80% of the energy you had in the morning. And the reason that's important is if you do it synthetically by biologics, whether it be coffee or tea or chocolate, whatever, your adrenal glands are going to pay the price.
Right.
Because you're going to have a cascade of chemical reactions to get your body back balanced. You're going to get a kick,
right,
but you're not going to get the result you want. But if you use the electrical system, think of the electrical system as infinite. I mean, our brain, we collect that energy that comes in through sound, 25,000 pieces of information. We actually convert that to energy. And we've all had the experience where we've been to a party. Maybe we really didn't want to be there, but they started playing music we liked, and we started tapping our foot, feeling the rhythm. We started moving our body. Well, that's because our body is designed to convert everything into energy. It's either good for you energy or bad for you energy. So with music, like nice music, our body has an interaction with that music and we get energy. Now, the same thing is true with light when we bring it in through the eyes and through the ears. And I'm going to talk about why we have lights in the ears, because people always go, what's the lights in the ears doing? Well, so let me finish this story so we can get on with the next thing. But with these people, we had them also do a sleep session. Right before they went to bed, they did a BrainTap session. Most people, their brain is dysregulated, which means all day long they're in high delta. Then when they go to sleep, the delta turns off and the beta turns on. And beta means they're thinking about all the fears, all of the frustrations. They didn't plan. We also told them they were required to not turn on the network news after 8 o'clock at night. Because a lot of the elderly, that's what they're doing. Unfortunately, they're getting hit by the fear mongering. I mean, they got to be aware of it. Obviously, you got to be safe, but you don't want to be consumed by it. I said, watch your news early, do what you can. I mean, I always say if you can't do anything about it, it's good to know about it, but don't let it control your life. Be safe. So after 6 weeks, we sent them back to their doctor first. Their doctor said, "Wow, if you'd have came to me like this, I would have never diagnosed you with dementia." But we can't take that we can't take it away. There's no cure for dementia. The medical doctor will say, oh, you have dementia. This is just going to get bad. You got to figure out who's going to take care of you, what's going to happen. Well, I'm here to tell you, you can fix your brain at any age. Your brain is very powerful. It can rebuild itself. It's more powerful than the liver. The liver can rebuild itself, right? They have surgeries now where you take a piece of somebody else's liver and it'll grow a whole new liver for you. Yeah. So the brain can do the same thing. It can rebuild itself. But what it needs is blood flow, oxygen, nutrients, all the things, and it needs the toxins out. So that's where the BrainTap comes in. So the reason listening at night right before you go to sleep is we want to get them to deep level 4 sleep. In 2016, the medical community actually came out because they just discovered something. It was amazing. They discovered that our brain had glia lymphomic cell pathways. Well, they've always been there. It's like us coming over here, Columbus coming over and finding America. There were Indians here. It's like he didn't discover anything. There were people already here. So this lymphatic system was already there. But what they found out was our brains in glia cells are the cells that basically communicate, and they're really good at networking. They're like MLMers. That if you know people that are into multi-level marketing, they're just always bringing people in bundles. But what they found out was this system literally stays dormant until you reach level 4 sleep. So if you've ever woke up in the middle of the night and you couldn't move your body, you had what's called sleep paralysis, then you actually woke up in the middle of a cleaning cycle. So think about it like you're at Ford Motor Company. They need to clean the line. They're not going to keep building cars while they're cleaning that line. They're going to shut the line down. They're going to clean it. Then the workers are going to go back. That's the way the nervous system works. That should happen 7 to 8 times every night. If it does, your brain will stay clean. If it doesn't, then you'll get a foggy brain. You'll get headaches. You'll get all the things that people don't like because those toxins have to go somewhere. And you can even get leaky brain. There's a lot of studies out there that show if you have a leaky gut, which comes from too much sugar and different other things that you're probably glad you got off. So, but it matches. You'll have the same thing in the brain. You'll have a leaky brain, which means those toxins are leaking out.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people it will show up as skin disorders. It's really a brain disorder. A lot of stress causes a lot of skin disorders because your skin is the first, basically your biggest sensory organ. So what happened was 3 times a day, they went to their doctor, no dementia. They did the study, they did the test with Cambridge Science. They're no longer, they can do the cognitive scoring test, they can play the games, they can do all those things. They're no longer on the dementia scale there. So we hook them up to the machine to figure out what's going on with their brain. Their brain's balanced. They have developed this master brainwave. They're now functioning. They go, what can I do about this? I said, well, you got to keep doing it. It's like exercise. If you don't go to the gym, you're going to lose muscle. If you don't do something with your brain, it's going to atrophy and die. Our brain is the biggest energy hog of our body. It uses up to 25% of all the energy and resources. So any way it can shut down, and one of the big examples that I give people is, if you speak 2 languages, which a lot of people do nowadays, they speak more than 1 language. I wasn't privileged to speak 2 languages when I was younger. I just spoke English, and then in college I found out how to not learn Spanish. But in the process, in the process, I did it well enough to pass, right? So, but then I promptly forgot almost everything but baños and cerveza. So you have those are the only 2 words you really need. But in the process of doing that, what happens is when you learn 2 languages, there's a part of your brain, all that neural network that learned to speak, learned the language, stayed active. So now you can learn another language. Our science officer at BrainTap, he went with me on my last trip to India, which was last September. And by the time we were done with that trip, he was speaking Hindi. He speaks 6 languages already.
Wow.
I go, how did you learn that? He goes, oh, just hearing him talk. Because we don't learn languages the way they teach it. We learn it by immersion, right? When we were kids, we learned object-oriented language and things. But our brain knows how to do that. We are so much smarter than what our school systems have us convinced in doing things. But with what we're doing now with that study, Seminole College in Florida actually has an IRB out. And if COVID wouldn't have happened, we would already be doing it. But they're going to do a 40 to 50 person study, full blown with the university backing it, where we're going to prove this out. Because in our pilot study, we had 100% success. So if we can do the same thing we've also done it with a sham headset, and people had no results. We've also done it with sham binaurals where there was no real binaurals and they're just music. In music alone, I was a little worried at first because I thought music, you can get a good result with music. But we didn't. It was good, but it wasn't as good as having the algorithm because we mix in binaural beats, isochronic tones, and frequencies. Now what frequencies are, some are called solfeggio frequencies, some are called Noget frequencies. These are all frequencies that they found that our body harmonizes best with. Like 432 and things like that. Our body naturally resonates with those. And they actually, because those frequencies actually cause our brain or trigger our brain to release the neurochemicals, they've associated them with love or harmony or peace because of the emotional release that happens while you're listening to those. And that's what we did with the earphones. So when those lights are flashing, they look like they're solid, but they're actually flashing at 187 times a second. And your brain, I tell people, if you've ever seen in the movie with Dustin Hoffman where they drop the matches on the floor, on the ground, and the person who has autism or whatever says 1,240. Mm-hmm. How do you know that? He just counted them. Well, our brain, everybody's brain can do that.
Yeah.
It's just, we just filter it out. So our brain does a lot more for us and so to hack the brain, what we can do is light can do it because every cell of your body has something called chromophores. What a chromophore is in the cell is like a battery. Think of your body like a photovoltaic panel, like from the sun, and you're charging yourself. We are the most underprescribed nutrient on earth is light. And because people are indoors a lot, we're driving our car a lot, we're designed to be outside when it's light out. So let's go back in time a little bit. If we were all together, we're in the Plains Indians and we're living in Kansas or whatever, and we go to sleep at night, we're sitting by the fire, first of all, we're having a campfire because we don't really want to go to sleep. It's still early, maybe. We're talking about the hunt. We're talking about the gathering, whatever's going on. And then finally the logs go out. Nobody wants to go out and get any more. So we go to bed, right? We don't turn our lights on, watch Netflix till 4 a.m. or whatever. We don't binge watch the stars. We basically go to sleep. The average person slept 12 hours a day just 100 years ago. In the 80s, it was eight hours. In the 90s, it became 7 hours. Now the average person sleeps less than 6 hours. Well, something's got to give. The biological system can only take so much. So what we found out was how the body's designed to wake up is from the light from the sun, right? In fact, in ancient scriptures in India, one of the things I learned, we're partners with 6 different universities in India that are MIT quality, and we go over there to study the meditation. But Dr. Vivek Sharma, who's on our board, but he's also head of physiology at AIMS Institute, which is the All Indian Institute of Medical Sciences. He was telling us in the Vedas, which is their ancient scripture, they talked about chronos therapy, light therapy. And a lot of people have heard of infrared, right, for therapy. You can buy saunas. I have one over here that I get in the morning. But our sun produces infrared at its highest amounts from 3:30 in the morning till sunrise. So that's why yoga, if you've ever studied yoga, I studied for 5 years with Yogi Bhajan in Phoenix. And I was really cheap at the time. I was in school, so I didn't have a lot of money. And you could do it for free if you got there at 3:30 in the morning. So I was there at 3:30 in the morning, and they would do it until sunrise. In their temple was awesome because they'd open up the doors and the sun would be rising. You'd be done with your little meditation at the end of the Kundalini session. It was awesome. But the reason they're doing that and they're getting that is that infrared. And what happens is those chromoforms fill up with light during that period of time. Then while they're out working in the fields, they don't get sunburn. We get sunburned because our body is designed to fill up with light in the morning to charge those batteries. And then our body actually reflects light. But we're not reflecting the dangerous light anymore because we're not full. Our batteries are not full. So, I did a little experiment because we have an infrared helmet that we have at BrainTap. And on my boat, I did a session in the morning, went out with no hat, and I burn. I'm Irish, so all I have to do is in the shade, I get a sunburn. But my head didn't burn that day. Now, I don't do it every time I go out there, but I do. We have a light bed that has infrared, but it's down at our office, not at our house. So, but our bodies are designed to protect us from these environmental hazards. Not this. We have healthy sunscreen that we use now, but there's a lot of bad things in all that because we're absorbing it into our system. What we really want to absorb is the light into our system. So with this light, sound, and vibration, we can train the brain. Now, the key part of the study that I neglected to mention was we also measured neuroplasticity. At the end of that study, these women had 49% greater neuroplasticity. What that means is, think of neuroplasticity as the ability for the brain to reorganize and come up with solutions to problems. And just like a computer, you want a fast computer, you want a lot of neuron connections in the brain. When we were born, we were fully connected. Literally, our brain was 100% connected. It started to unplug as we started to learn. In fact, they said one of the worst things for our brain was learning to read early. And it disrupts the brain's ability to repattern, because as soon as you learn to read, one part of your brain just shuts off because it's not needed. Remember, it's an energy hog, so it's going to shut off. That's why now some kids, they start reading. My daughter started reading at 3. I never trained her. She basically started reading signs and everything. So her brain was obviously ready to read. But other people, that's why in a lot of cultures, they evaluate the kids. Some kids do like drama and sports and just physical fitness until they get to a certain age, because that really helps the brain. One of the best things you can do for your brain is exercise. So that's a key part of having a healthy brain. But also it's restorative. We need to have a way to restore the brain. I think the biggest thing people are lacking out there that are biohackers is that they go. They're always looking for that advantage, and we're all looking for that advantage. But then we give up our sleep. We wear it like a badge. I only slept 5 hours, only slept 6 hours when you need it, and they don't recover.
Right.
Like we have one of our pro teams. We're in most pro athletic teams and locker rooms right now. One of them is Kansas City Sporting. They're a professional soccer team, and they sent me a picture of their BrainTap room. They have 20 stations where they're doing this. These things you put on your legs and it pumps the bad blood out. You know, they're out there running on their practice and they're all burnt out. So while they're doing that, they're laying back in zero gravity chairs with the BrainTaps on, and they're doing it. So they're just laying there. Before that, they said they were all on their phones and doing, and of course, if you're on that, you're still in your sympathetic overload. Mm-hmm. And what we want to do is flip that switch to the thriving brain. And I told them we have a clinic in Provo, Utah that does IV drips for, you know, that's one of the newest things for biohacking too, is to get a vitamin assessment of your body and get your own prescribed nutrients. They actually found out if they do them with BrainTap, the person absorbs 30% more of the nutrient into their body instead of eliminating it out. So that's because I tell people what it made sense to me was when you pray before you eat, or even just take a few deep breaths and relax, you're going to digest that food better. You know, but if you're watching the news and you're talking or arguing, we've all unfortunately probably been in a situation where we had that at dinner and then our meal didn't set right, you know, because something got us upset. So we really want to be calm, relaxed, and take those moments, even if it's just sitting in a chair. You know, one of the things I tell people, if you can't afford BrainTap, then at least sit in a chair. Think of your thoughts like you would think of leaves falling off a tree. It's interesting, but not meaningful. The thoughts are not as important as the physical being present, they call it. And then work on your breathing. And there's two different breathing techniques that I'll share with the group so they know. One is called box breathing. And with your eyes closed, one of the brain hacks you can do is you just slow, like I'm looking up right now at the top of my forehead. We've all seen pictures of saints like that. Well, what we know in neuroscience is as soon as you do that, you've triggered alpha brainwave activity. You've told your brain, because that's a natural thing we do when we go to sleep. Our eyes roll back and we go to sleep. So we're going to trigger that. That becomes a trigger to tell the brain it's time to relax. Sit with your spine as straight as possible, because the spine is the keyboard to the brain. And if you don't do that, then what happens is the information doesn't flow up and down the spine correctly, and we don't get the real relaxation that we need, because it's all about moving energy. And then the breathing, this one's called box breathing. You breathe into the mental count of 4, you hold it for the mental count of 4, you breathe out to the mental count of 4, you hold it out for the mental count of 4, and you continue that process for as long as you can. So like in your case, before you got in the tub, you might only be able to do it for 4 or 5 cycles, and you're done that day. But don't force it. If it starts to become difficult, it's better to get up and move and do something. Don't try to force it, because then you're creating a bad habit. You know, go ahead.
I was going to ask a question in regards to, I've been starting to like study more of like the nostril breathing, where you close one. I've been doing that. I was doing that in the bathtub. Can you explain a little bit more in regards to that one?
Yeah, what's happening there, they call that a pranayama, which what's happening is when you breathe in through, let's say you breathe in through your right nostril, you're actually activating your left hemisphere, and vice versa. So depending upon, one they would say is hot, one is cold. It depends on if you're left or right-handed. But what's happening is you're teaching the brain to regulate. So you're doing that's a breathing technique that's doing exactly, that's a little more sophisticated than what I was teaching. But yeah, you can just hold the breath here, then go over here, breathe in through one, breathe out through the other, or just breathe in and out. And you're going to find you can change your mood right away by doing that. That's one of the, they do that a lot with yoga. They have a lot of different techniques that they do like that. The simplest one that I like people using is, because everyone goes to bed at some point. You're gonna fall into sleep, but don't go to sleep consciously. I mean, don't go to sleep unconsciously. A lot of people think, I got to get to bed, and they're tossing and turning. I can't sleep. Well, you're not supposed to sleep like that. We have to unwind the stress out of our body. And if you think about progressive relaxation, your body's here with your eyes closed. You breathe into that mental count of 4. You breathe out to the mental count of 8. You just keep that breathing going, but you move through the different parts of your body. And what I tell the clients I'm working with is just think about how grateful you are for your body. You know, gratefulness is like a superpower. You know, your body responds so well, and also compassion. I mean, they've done a lot of studies with meditation with especially in Wisconsin, the University of Wisconsin, where they show high gamma brainwaves when you're thinking of compassion and love and basically sharing your energy. And I tell people, it's not what happens to you, it's what happens through you. So imagine this energy coming through you, broadcast it out, because once you get used to moving energy through your body, you'll have all the energy you need. I mean, if we were here live, I can show you, I can get the hair to stand on my hand. I can get energy to move through my body all the time. I don't have to just think about it. You see the goose hairs? All I have to just think about it. I can run energy through my body because my electrical system has been trained like that. And I'm not a hands-on healer, but I want it for myself. And you can build up your own energy stores. And it's all about practice. And breathing is a key part of that. Most people just do not know how to breathe. So that, those are some key things.
Now, can you show us, because you showed at the very beginning that it's an app. We get this app on our phone, but can you show us the headset behind you? And do you have to use that headset, or can you use any headset?
You can use any headset. I'm mic'd up, so I can't make it over there.
Okay.
But unless I get on mic.
No, you're fine.
You'll see there's a really good video if they want to go see more about it, called Just the Facts video. If they type in BrainTap or my name on YouTube, it's probably been seen over 80,000 times or something like that. And I go through the science step by step. It's not a sales video at all, so they can learn a lot more about there. But what's happening is you got visor lights. So and there's 5 settings on those lights. Some people use it without hitting even one tip up, and the brain still is reacting.
Right.
But there's 5 different levels. The more light, the deeper the penetration. But depending upon your eye coloring, blue light people bring in more light into their body. And your eyes actually are bringing light into your brain.
Nice.
That's what we need. And light brings vasodilation, blood flow, and circulation. So we're also bringing in through the ears. There's lights in the ears. So meridians are all over the body, but in your ears, there's a conjunction of them. So that means people take lasers and they go, oh, we're going to work on the intestines. We're going to hit the laser right here. We're going to hit the laser here, because the ear has different points that match different parts of the body. So what I did was I wanted to find out, how can I get 4 joules of energy? That's how much a laser would give you in a dose through the ears. So we do it, you're wearing it. And what happens is energy is going to look for the path of least resistance. It's going to move through those meridians. We can even measure this. We have a device called a data pulse analysis we had Russia build for us, and we can measure ATP production in the body. Wow. So we can show how this energy moves through the body, because we live in an energy economy. So the light, now if you don't have the headset, you're missing out on the light. And we say it just takes a little bit more time. So like if you use the headset in the sessions, what you can do in one session, we find that you can get that same physiological effect in 3 with just the app. Okay. So you can still get it, because sound is powerful, and some people just can't afford the headset. And the headset is about $600 or a little bit over $600. So, and then once they buy it, they have access to sessions called the Founder's Choice, or they have an option to buy a subscription, which is more sessions, but they'll always have sessions if they buy the headset. And they can go to the website that's being scrolled across the screen. There for 99 cents, they can get a free copy of my book, Thrive and Overdrive, and they get 15 days free on the app.
Nice.
So they can learn more. And I go into a lot of detail in the book, Thrive and Overdrive, about what we talked about here today too. Not about the study, because that's new, but the everything else.
All right, so that the website that we're seeing right now, you can go to, you can get a copy of the book as well as 15 days free of the app, which I highly, highly recommend for people to do, and check it out. And like you said, you can do it with obviously the headphone, the headset, or just use your own earbuds. And that's what I did. And I still do today, is use just earbuds. And I love it because you do hear it in different spots.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about the technology today. Even the cheapest earphones are pretty good. And sound actually creates a spatial awareness, because nothing's happening out here. It's all happening in here anyway, so we can use sound. And when you introduce light to it, we can put more dimensions to it. Like people will actually feel like they're moving, and they think it's virtual reality. Some people do, but it's really just light and sound at a certain frequency to train the brain. Their mind's making all the other things happen. Like a lot of people have color shows, and they're seeing the neural wash and all that while they're doing it, that they're usually not aware of, but that happens all the time.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Patrick, thank you so, so much for coming on and sharing. I mean, this is just, I have taken, I think, 3 pages of notes.
Oh,
There's just so much
I've
information.
taken it so much that I can't wait to actually come back to it, recap it, and probably ask some more questions because this was really good.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And, our mission is to better a billion brains. So all these kind of activities help us. Well, I think my belief is that if we can get a billion people meditating in the morning, afternoon, and evening, and maybe they won't all do it at the same time, but at least once a day, we're going to change the stress level of the planet because it's just getting crazy out there. We need to have our best selves show up without the stress. So that's really
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
all right. Well, thank you for having me.